A woman in Africa told me the story of how the world came to be. She said, first there was the sun, but it had no one to shine on. So the sun made man. And man looked up at the sun and asked, why did you make me? And the sun said, because I was alone. My whole life I've been looking for what we found today. We're not alone anymore. Cheers.
Cheers.
Hello, Wampa episode 46. Not far off the big 50 now, mate.
I know, we're getting there, aren't we?
Yeah, we're getting up there. Not light in housekeeping. I do want to update our listenership on where we are with our planned interview with Mr. Tony Buckingham, who is the leader of the East Anglia UFO group, a gentleman who witnessed something in the early 70s himself that he couldn't explain. We had hoped to do it sooner. I've been liaising with Tony about this, talking him through what we need to do the interview, etc., etc. Tony's not available for us to interview until Saturday the 3rd of June, and we'll be interviewing him that morning, 10 a.m. that morning. The podcast special, the local news special on this interview, will be released during the week after. If you've got questions you want to talk to Tony about, and remember, this is going to be a serious interview, so sensible questions, please. Anything that's sort of derisory or humorous or crosses the line, we won't include in the show. Get them into us. You've got plenty of time now. I think we could probably give people right up until about Friday the 2nd to get any questions for Tony into us. Obviously, the earlier the better, because we don't want to be rushing around on our own show prep at the last minute, do we, mate?
No. We get emails and audio in as early as possible. We get it in the show, and that's a benefit for everyone.
Yeah, it just makes our workload a lot easier, and I think ultimately helps us to produce a much higher quality podcast. It's going to be on the topics of the East Anglia UFO group, and we're hoping we can open Tony up a little bit and get him to talk about his own sighting back in the early 70s. Now, we need to be clear about this. Tony is not turning around saying that he's seen aliens. All Tony is saying is that he saw something back in the early 70s that he couldn't explain. I don't even know what that is. You don't know what it is, do you, Mark?
I have no idea. I know it's down Blackhorse Drove, which is, quite local to where I was living in the 80s, so it's very interesting to me.
Well, I think we've all seen things down Blackhorse Drove that we can't explain before. But we're hoping that we can open Tony up about that story and get him to talk about that a bit, because we're coming at this from a local angle. It will be a local news special, albeit hopefully quite a fascinating and interesting one. Also, you, our listeners, it doesn't matter if you're local, it doesn't matter where you are in the world. You could be like Joseph out in Oklahoma. If you have ever seen something that you couldn't explain or describe or, had a rational explanation in a conventional sense in the sky or even on the ground, who knows? Strange occurrences. Let us know about it. Don't sit there in silence. Don't listen to the show when we put it out there and turn around and say, oh, well, we could have talked about my so-and-so. Well, talk about your so-and-so. Email your story through to us via text form. We can read it out on that special. Send it through via voicemail. We can insert your own story directly into the show and then discuss it. If you want to remain anonymous, fine. Obviously, we need to know who you are, but we can respect your wishes to remain anonymous. You can still send us a voicemail like that. I can distort your voice so it's unrecognisable. I could make you sound like Ed 209 or a stormtrooper if you wanted to. It's easily done. Don't just hide behind your headphones. If you want to be a part of the show or a part of this special that's coming up, or you've got a story yourself, or know of a story yourself that will fit into this vein, get in touch. Let us put it out there. So really, that's all I want to cover on housekeeping. I don't know if you've got anything you want to add to that, Mark.
I think, housekeeping recently, we've been a bit quiet. We need a few more people getting into us with reviews, etc. I think, heads up has always been at least a week in advance on the showcase. So get some more reviews over to us and we get involved and, get them on the show as soon as possible.
Yeah, we're as forward about that as we can be. The circumstances, like the last week, you've been away, so we haven't quite been as on board about getting the information out as promptly as what we usually would be. All the same, no excuses. We're your show, interact with us. There's a lot of people, I think, that listen. I mean, we still see healthy download figures. And you think, well, people take the episode, listen, enjoy it, great, another one in a fortnight. And that's perfectly fine. I mean, I think that's probably the way most podcast listeners work. But we're also open to feedback. Also, anyone that wants to share our show links about, go on to any of the myriad of podcatcher sites, whatever podcatcher site you yourself use. It could be Stitcher, could be the old conventional go-to for everybody, iTunes. You might even take the show directly from the Libsyn blog. You might listen in on iHeartRadio. We don't know where you're listening from. Wherever you are, though, why not share those posts about? Wherever you are, why not go on there and give us a review? It all helps. I mean, it's not really about glory for us, but it helps us. It flags the show up to other people who then might have a listen themselves. People might read reviews, think, I don't know, these old boys don't sound too bad. I'll give them a try. It just helps us to grow the show that little bit more. So come on, stop hiding behind your headphones and get on board in an interactive way.
I like the way you said about old boys there, Dave. We are getting on, I guess.
Well, I'm thinking more about local terminology. Okay, what have you got on the Star Wars front then?
Let's have a look. We've got a few stories coming in. Obviously, something recently popped up was the Han Solo concept pictures. So these can be found in various places. I found them on StarWarsNewsNet.com, and we got a picture of the sort of concept costume for Han Solo, as well as the a few sort of blueprints of different craft, and also Han Solo himself in costume. So it's all looking pretty good at the moment.
I have seen the post that you're talking about, but I haven't really had a chance to go into that post and click through the individual images. They're like sketches, aren't they?
Yeah, and I mean the front of this fighter does look a bit like a AT-AT sort of head, but with wings on the side. So it's quite interesting. It does look very imperial.
It looks a bit of a broad design, doesn't it?
Yeah, that's right.
There's some stuff also now, just getting sidetracked on that a little bit, is getting leaked and released from The Last Jedi, in addition to the trailer we've seen. There is concept art out there. I don't know how bona fide, genuine, 100% spot on it is, because it's a picture that I've noticed doing the rounds recently of a design of TIE Interceptor, which is slightly different to the conventional TIE Interceptor we're familiar with from Return of the Jedi. And apparently this is Kylo Ren's personal fighter. Now, like I said, that's what the image is. That's the story that's going around the internet. People are sharing in posts. We're not saying it's genuine because we don't know, but it's out there. So there's a little bit of stuff coming through now. I mean, you've talked about this sort of concept type art for the Han Solo movie. Whatever, this is going to be old artwork that's now coming out in that respect. I mean, wherever they are with this film, I trust they're much further ahead than this. I mean, the stuff that's in this artwork, I assume, is probably been made as a prop and being used by now.
Yeah, at least there's miniatures or something like that.
Yeah, I imagine so. And it's got to be off the drawing board and into production by now in a practical sense. Models and, well, not models and stuff, but or at least getting run through the Pentium the way they do it this day and age. I mean, in the old days, somebody had to sit there and glue and paint these things up. Every film was like an Airfix set. I have seen, like you said, I haven't had a chance to look completely at these images. I've kind of seen the post, and I have noticed the Han Solo concept in the post, and it does look very similar to sort of Han Solo Episode 4 A New Hope sort of time period in the way the guy's dressed and everything, doesn't it?
Yeah, that's right.
I mean, you've got the waistcoat and the blaster sort of worn low in a holster, and the sort of typical sort of boots and trousers, and the sort of white sort of shirt he's wearing. So it is a very much a familiar palette. I don't think they're necessarily going to change the look of characters too much from what we're familiar to.
Also, if you look at the logo for the film now, the L in Han Solo is actually Han Solo's blaster on its side. So
a bit like 007 with the 7 doubling up as the gun.
Yeah, that's right. So hopefully that'll stick around for the movie posters when they start to be released.
00 Solo with 2 O's. It's got 2 O's. I'm sure we could be writing them a killer slogan here on this show whilst we're doing it.
I think so. I mean, the cast is growing as well, isn't it? I mean, obviously we've got Alden Ehrenreich as Han Solo, and it's definitely him in the concept pictures. Also, we've got a sort of strong British cast. We've got Emilia Clarke, Tandy Newton, and Phoebe Waller-Bridge. So there are quite a few British actors. Woody Harrelson's been quite vocal recently about it. He was in Cambridge the other week, wasn't he? So
yeah.
I think it's certainly gaining momentum. A speeder called the Red Cup that seems to be like some kind of something like a land speeder.
Right.
And I don't know if he's going to be riding around on that because the image is just sort of an outline of a figure. I don't know if it is a Han Solo speeder or if it would just be used, in general concept art.
Well, it could just be a generic vehicle in the background. It could just be something that's traversing up and down a street somewhere or something that simple. Or it could be a prominent vehicle in the show. I mean, I guess it's all got to go through a design process. I mean, I imagine we'll be getting the Easter eggs in this that we got in Rogue One.
Yeah.
They do like to do that. You've mentioned it having a highly British, well, a lot of British in the cast, which is obviously something we also got to a degree with Rogue One. I mean, not just Felicity Jones, and I know the rest of the cast was quite diverse, but obviously Riz Ahmed is of British Asian descent. A lot of the rebel troopers were Scottish or Irish or had a sort of Essex/London accent when you listen to them speak. I believe that many of the rebel fighter pilots were British as well. And in fact, in some cases, they actually had to overdub the words with an American accent because I think they thought it was a little bit too West End kind of thing, if that makes sense. So, I mean, I don't know. I wonder if perhaps they're going to look to do this with the Han Solo thing as well. That they're going to keep along a safe line with the sequential films. But on the standalones, perhaps they're going to be a little bit more adventurous. Do we know who the director is for the Han Solo movie?
Yeah, it's the directors of the Lego movie and also the Batman Lego movie. That's Phil Lord and Christopher Miller.
Okay, are they both Americans?
They are, yeah, and they're quite humorous, and I guess that sort of wry wit we're used to with Han Solo will feature.
Yeah, I mean, perhaps they're the right people to write that then. So you speak of that, I finally got to see the Lego Batman movie the other week.
How did you enjoy it?
It was okay. I didn't think it was as good as the original Lego movie.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's got some very funny moments in it. Is it? Have you seen it?
I haven't seen it. No, I'm waiting for it to come out on the Skybox.
Oh, I'm a bit hesitant to spoil too much for you, but it's Superman. They have the Phantom Zone.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, well, I think Batman decides the Joker, decides we need some more hardcore villains in the world. So he gets hold of the gun thing that transfers villains to the Phantom Zone, or he gets himself via Batman transferred to the Phantom Zone, and then comes back with various villains that are in the Phantom Zone.
Right.
And some of the villains he comes back with are hilarious. He's got the Gremlins are there, the agents out of the Matrix. Who else have we got? Daleks. He comes back from this lot into Gotham City, and Batman's got to deal with all of this. It's quite funny. It's got a lot of that sort of humour and that sort of far out aspect that I think the Lego movie had, but I don't think it's quite as good as the Lego movie. It is still quite funny, but I don't think it's quite up there.
Well, Batman for me was one of the highlights of the original Lego movie when he went on the Millennium Falcon and stole the hyperdrive.
Oh, he's still that character. I think it's still the same voice actor and everything.
Yeah.
But I still don't think overall it's quite as good as the original. What else have we got on Star Wars getting sidetracked by Lego Batman?
Well, Ian McDiarmid has recorded lines for Rebels Season 4.
Okay.
That was a rumour, but this week it's actually been confirmed. So fingers crossed the Emperor will be making an appearance and, laying down some lines in that, which is the final season, I believe, isn't it, for Rebels?
Yeah, there's the final season, yeah. I know they had a separate voice actor playing Palpatine back in the days of the Clone Wars animated. I can't give you names off the top of my head, but I believe the original voice actor they were using for Palpatine in animation actually passed away and he was replaced by somebody else.
Right.
But it sounds like Ian McDiarmid's come in on the gig now, which, I think he made that character his own. There's not many people can emulate that voice the way he does.
I think we've all tried down the years.
Yeah, normally after a few beers, we've all become Palpatine. Speaking of like Star Wars podcasting, I mean, there's another one I listen to, the Best in Galaxy Star Wars podcast, which is like a comedy radio play set in the Star Wars universe.
Yeah.
And they've got a character in that who plays Palpatine. He sounds more like Holly out of Red Dwarf. But it makes me laugh because you've got all these canon excuses for Force powers and all this lot. And he's explained how Palpatine summons up Force lightning by rubbing his socks on the carpet and building up a static charge.
That was always good for electric shock, wasn't it?
Yeah, well, that's how Palpatine does it, apparently. Yeah, so that'd be interesting to see. I mean, it sounds like they're getting some good ideas on for the 4th season of Star Wars Rebels. There's also the expanded universe's influence. I mean, things like the TIE Defender and Admiral Thrawn, which are things that have come into Rebels from the expanded universe and therefore or legends. And I still don't like saying, I keep thinking it's like Muhammad Ali or something whenever I say that, as they've rebranded it because it's no longer canon, but they're still picking and choosing what they want to make out of that old EU into canon. In some Star Wars Rebels episodes, they've had things like the TIE Defender come in, which makes that canon as well, which is a variant of the TIE Fighter, which has its origins in the expanded universe. So I believe in the trailer for the 4th season of Star Wars Rebels, that TIE Defender features quite a bit as well. So it'll be interesting to see if they keep a consistency there, if they keep bringing the sort of pick and choose elements that they want to from the old EU or Legends, as it's now called, quotations Legends because I don't like it, into Rebels and make it canon.
Legends does sound like a bit like a football manager game where you could buy Pele and Bobby Moore and play players like that, legends of the past.
Yeah. George Best, they're all in your squad.
Yeah, that's it.
Maradona, you name it. You've got all these
all the great players of soccer. I've got it here. It's Nick Jameson who played Palpatine in the Clone Wars that I was a big fan of,
right?
Which is the one in 2003, which is a bit further back, isn't it? Before the rendered version.
Oh, was it the animation? It's still the animation you're talking about?
Yeah, they're really short episodes, weren't they?
Yeah, I believe they were compiled into like a couple of longer episodes, and later on those episodes were released on DVD. I believe it's those ones are the first ones we get to see General Grievous in, because that was pre-Revenge of the Sith.
Yeah.
That was kind of screened at around the time between the two movies that it would have been set in. So, yeah, I mean, they weren't too bad. I mean, the animation was a little bit sort of 1980s felt tip for me.
It was the guy who done Samurai Jack, wasn't it? The same sort of artist.
Yeah. Oh, God, what was it? Oriental sounding guy. I don't know. Other people could tell us. But, yeah, I mean, like you say, it'd be interesting to see what comes in the 4th season of Rebels. What else have we got in the Star Wars front?
Okay, let's have a look. Also, an interesting fact, really. Kylo is now the 901st baby name in the USA. So a lot of people are calling their kid Kylo.
Kylo?
Yeah, this guy wasn't exactly a good influence, really, was he?
Oh, I hate it when people do this, when you get kids that are named George after George Best and all the rest of it. Although that's obviously not as far out as Kylo. What's number? Have you got the names either side of it?
I haven't got either side. I can't remember what. Obviously, I guess Dave and Mark are probably in the top 100. I'd hope so, anyway.
Well, who knows? I mean, it's a bit like whenever you look in the Hatched, Matched and Dispatched of any local rag nowadays, and you look at names and you think, where the hell did that come from? I think I don't know. We live in a time when people are trying to make their children stand out more by giving them an obscure name. I think about it when we named our child. I mean, we gave her quite a conventional name, thinking that, we're not going to make her show out just because of her name. She can show out because of her achievements in life. But ironically, by giving her a normal name, we've almost made her stand out.
Yeah, because double-barrelled names? Or?
Well, double-barrelled names. Blatantly Anglo-Saxon children seem to have Celtic names now. A lot of Irish and Scottish names have become quite popular when naming children, haven't they?
Yeah.
Which, I mean, obviously that's not too bad. I mean, you might have some bit of ancestry or something in that regard. But, I mean, Kylo's a bit far out there, isn't it?
It's not really a conventional... I mean, a lot of, as you say, Anglo-Saxon, but obviously biblical names, I guess, obviously come into effect, don't they?
Well, we both have biblical names, or exactly. An anglicised version of those names. But yeah.
Ezra is number 99. Ezra, is that an unusual name?
I don't know, but he's a character in Rebels.
No, exactly. Dexter, number 78.
Dexter's kind of a name anyway, isn't it?
Yeah.
We can let that go. I mean, Dexter, didn't he own a diner in Attack of the Clones? The guy with all the arms. Yeah. Well, I think Dexter was a name prior to that.
Arlo, number 62. Arlo? It sounds a bit Star Wars-ish.
I think I've heard that one before as well. I don't think that one's quite so far out there.
Okay, and we're moving up the table here. Let's have a look. Nothing really. Number 30, Riley. It's not really unusual, is it?
Yeah.
Riley's kind of like a surname that's been changed into a Christian name, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Theo, number 21.
Okay.
Mason, 22. I think of Mason from like a Steven Seagal character or something like that.
I think of a stonemason or a freemason.
Yeah. Oscar, number 9. Oscar's very popular at the moment, isn't it? Harry Potter has influenced, obviously, Harry, number 2.
Okay.
Number 1, Oliver.
I'm not too far out there down the list, but like you say, you start getting up towards the thousands and you get some right bizarre names. It would be interesting some time to have a bit of a look at this and a bit of a study and see what other film characters are coming in, you know. Is there some poor child somewhere in school called Wolverine Jeffries or something like that because of the parents' fandom?
Well, Logan is up there. Logan is in the charts, which is obviously Wolverine's sort of name, isn't it? Logan.
But
David
that's kind
is
of
number 53.
Is it? Oh, good. Yeah. Nice to know that's still coming. I mean, everyone's got a mate called Dave. I mean, I think a lot of the time in the US, I think David is a name that tends to be associated with people of Judaism or Jewish descent, which I think is the only country where that tends to be the case, because I think around the rest of the world, it's just kind of a name.
Yeah, that's right. Star of David, etc. Yeah, Jewish sort of faith. Dave's a popular name, isn't it?
Yeah.
But I can't find Mark in the top 100, so I'm way unfashionable these days.
Well, you're not notable enough.
No.
Right, maybe one day in a few years' time, people will be naming their children after us. Who knows? Perhaps we'll be famous enough.
And Wampa.
I've got a couple of our old business cards up on the notice board at work, you know, just so if people want to check us out, kind of thing. And somebody was reading it during the week and they were saying like Wampa. They couldn't even read it. And they're like, what the hell's that? And all of a sudden I didn't kind of give out that, you know, it's a podcast I'm on. So I said, oh, that just means like hot Wampa, like the ice beast in The Empire Strikes Back. Well, I've never seen it. I said, what, too cool for Star Wars? No, I've just never seen it. You know, I found with the old too cool for Star Wars phrase, you immediately put somebody who's trying to be cool on the back foot and on the defensive.
Yeah.
It kind of does work. So if you say that, I think, oh, you're too good for it, are you, mate? You know, and this, that and the other. And they're kind of taken back a bit. So whenever I come up against someone who's trying to be too cool, that's what I do now. Obviously, we've had Star Wars Day with May the 4th and what have you, and there's a few comedians on my Facebook friends list that are putting stuff up like Happy Star Trek Day and all this, that and the other, trying to be funny.
Let's be honest, Dave, it was Eurovision last night, wasn't it? And a lot of people watched it. And what did you put today?
How did Bucks Fizz get on? Yeah, but that's my revenge. And I am not ashamed for finding Eurovision tasteless and classless and not watching it and not really being interested in it and making a joke out of that, making a joke out of my own ignorance.
It is all of those things, and it is very cheesy. But
yeah, I thought we'd voted out of that anyway. What are we still going for?
Yeah, I'm afraid that despite Brexit, we are still involved with that competition.
Well, we might have liberated their continent, but we'll never be honeys to them, will we?
Well, we never will.
No.
Ian Abercrombie is the Chancellor Palpatine in the Clone Wars. That was the guy. I mean, that's quite a strange name, Abercrombie. You know, it sounds like a fashion label.
Yeah.
But, so he passed away, did he?
I don't know whether he passed away or whether he replaced the guy that passed away. One of them passed away. I'm certain of it. I mean, perhaps a listener out there is better informed and can tell us, because it's kind of scratching at the periphery of my knowledge at the moment. But yeah, I believe so. Anything else in the Star Wars universe?
No, that's it. I mean, we're kind of that sort of oasis between trailers, really, aren't we? We're sort of waiting for the next Last Jedi and some more updates on the Han Solo movies. So.
Yeah, this is kind of like that period where I think where all the sort of fluff stuff comes out, where this, that and the other comes out, and it's not really stuff that's interesting. A lot of the stories that are coming out now are a little bit trivial, so we can't really go too in-depth on things. And like you say, I think until we get some sort of exclusive or some sort of leak or some sort of story about any of the upcoming movies coming out, or they spring another trailer on us at some point. I don't really know that we've got a lot, unless there's other events that go on around Star Wars or anything that comes up in the news. It is a bit of a desert at the moment. It is a bit barren out there. So we might as well, I guess, move on to Showcase.
Okay.
Hot Wampa. They mostly come at night. Mostly.
As usual, we've got my pre-recorded soundtrack Gumph to get through before we discuss the movie. Prometheus is a 2012 science fiction film directed by Ridley Scott, written by John Spates and Damon Lindelof, and starring Noomi Rapace, Michael Fassbender, Guy Pearce, Idris Elba, Logan Marshall Green, and Charlize Theron. It is set in the late 21st century and centres on the crew of the spaceship Prometheus, as it follows a star map discovered among the artefacts of several ancient Earth cultures. Seeking the origins of humanity, the crew arrives on a distant world and discovers a threat that could cause the extinction of the human species. Development of the film began in the early 2000s as a fifth instalment in the Alien franchise. Scott and director James Cameron developed ideas for a film that would serve as a prequel to Scott's 1979 science fiction horror film Alien. By 2003, the development of Alien vs Predator took precedence, and the project remained dormant until 2009, when Scott again showed interest. Spates wrote a script for a prequel to the events of the Alien films, but Scott opted for a different direction to avoid repeating cues from those films. In late 2010, Lindelof joined the project to rewrite Spates' script, and he and Scott developed a story that precedes the story of Alien, but is not directly connected to that franchise. According to Scott, although the film shares strands of Alien's DNA, so to speak, and takes place in the same universe, Prometheus explores its own mythology and ideas. Prometheus entered production in April 2010 with extensive design phases, during which the technology and creatures that the film required were developed. Principal photography began in March 2011 with an estimated 120 to 130 million US dollars budget. The project was shot using 3D cameras throughout, almost entirely on practical sets, and on location in England, Iceland, Spain and Scotland. It was promoted with a marketing campaign that included viral activities on the web, 3 videos featuring the film's leading actors in character, which expanded on elements of the fictional universe, were released and met with a generally positive reception and awards. Prometheus was released on June 1st, 2012 in the United Kingdom, and on June 8th, 2012 in North America. The film received praise for the aesthetic design and the acting, especially Fassbender's performance as the android David, while plot elements that remained unresolved or predictable were the main source of criticism. The film grossed over 403 million worldwide. A sequel, Alien Covenant, premiered on London on May 4th, 2017, and is scheduled to be released in the United States on May 19th, 2017. Plot to Prometheus. As a spacecraft departs a planet, a humanoid alien drinks an iridescent liquid and then dissolves. The remains of the alien cascade into a waterfall. The alien's DNA strands mix with the water. In 2089, archaeologists Elizabeth Shaw and Charlie Holloway discover a star map in Scotland that matches others from several unconnected ancient cultures. They interpret this as an invitation from humanity's forerunners, the engineers. Peter Wayland, the elderly CEO of Wayland Corporation, funds an expedition to follow the map to the distant moon LV-223 aboard the scientific vessel Prometheus. The ship's crew travels in stasis while the android David monitors their voyage. Arriving in December 2093, mission director Meredith Vickers informs them of their mission to find the engineers and to not make contact without her permission. The Prometheus lands on the barren, mountainous surface near a large artificial structure which a team explores. Inside, they find stone cylinders, a monolithic statue of a humanoid head, and the decapitated corpse of a large alien, thought to be an engineer. Shaw recovers its head. The crew finds other bodies, leading them to surmise the species is extinct. Crew members Milburn and Fifield grow uncomfortable with the discoveries and attempt to return to Prometheus, but become stranded in the structure when they get lost. The expedition is cut short when a storm forces the crew to return to the ship. David secretly takes a cylinder from the structure, while the remaining cylinders begin leaking a dark liquid. In the ship's lab, the engineer's DNA is found to match that of humans. David investigates the cylinder and the liquid inside. He intentionally taints a drink with the liquid and gives it to the unsuspecting Holloway, who had stated he would do anything for answers. Shortly after, Shaw and Holloway have sex. Inside the structure, a snake-like creature kills Milburn and sprays a corrosive fluid that melts Fifield's helmet. Fifield falls face first into a puddle of dark liquid. When the crew returns, they find Milburn's corpse. David separately discovers a control room containing a surviving engineer in stasis and a star map highlighting Earth. Meanwhile, Holloway sickens rapidly. He is rushed back to Prometheus, but Vickers refuses to let him aboard, and at his urging burns him to death with a flamethrower. Later, a medical scan reveals that Shaw, despite being sterile, is pregnant. Fearing the worst, she uses an automated surgery table to extract a squid-like creature from her abdomen. Shaw then discovers that Wayland has been in stasis aboard Prometheus. He explains that he wants to ask the engineers to prevent his death from old age. As Wayland prepares to leave for the structure, Vickers addresses him as father. A monstrous, mutated Fifield returns to the Prometheus and kills several crew members before he is killed. The Prometheus's captain, Yannick, speculates that the structure was an engineer military installation that lost control of a virulent biological weapon, the dark liquid. He also determines that the structure houses a spacecraft. Wayland and a team return to the structure, accompanied by Shaw. David wakes the engineer from stasis and speaks to him in an attempt to explain what Wayland wants. The engineer responds by decapitating David and killing Wayland and his team before reactivating the spacecraft. Shaw flees and warns Yannick that the engineer is planning to release the liquid on Earth, convincing him to stop the spacecraft. Yannick and the remaining crew sacrifice themselves by ramming the Prometheus into the alien craft, ejecting the lifeboat in the process, while Vickers flees in an escape pod. The engineer's disabled spacecraft crashes onto the ground, killing Vickers. Shaw goes to the lifeboat and finds her alien offspring is alive and has grown to gigantic size. David's still active head warns Shaw that the engineer is pursuing her. The engineer forces open the lifeboat's airlock and attacks Shaw, who releases her alien offspring onto the engineer. It thrusts an ovipositor down the engineer's throat, subduing him. Shaw recovers David's remains and with his help launches another engineer spacecraft. She intends to reach the engineer's homeworld in an attempt to understand why they wanted to destroy humanity. In the lifeboat, an alien creature bursts out of the engineer's chest. Prometheus, then. A film with many critics and many polar opinions, and then polar opinions being opposite to each other, like two opposing magnets. Where do we start with it? What's your impressions and your thoughts of Prometheus, Mark?
Well, I mean, the tagline was, "The search for our beginning could lead to our end." And I found it, it is a bit of a puzzle box, isn't it? You get in there. Obviously, being Alien fans, we're hoping in for a xenomorph somewhere along the line, but discover a completely different movie in a way, about planet engineers and the search for the beginning of our origins.
I think you've probably, in a nutshell, got it there. I think Ridley Scott was on a bit of a hiding to nothing with this, in the sense that any film he makes in this universe is always going to be compared up to the excellence of Alien. Now, it doesn't help that he's also got many other great movies like Blade Runner, etc., to his name. The guy's had a lot of success and a lot of critical success. And let's face this, when it comes to world building in movies, whether it's the realistic slobby inside of the Nostromo or the world that Deckard lives in Blade Runner, Ridley Scott is very good at building worlds and giving us those worlds on the screen. And this, as we know, albeit at a different location on a different timeline, is the same world to the official Alien movies. Let's keep Alien vs Predator out of this. Let's just focus on this as in the 4 Alien movies and then the prequel scenario with the Prometheus movie onwards. Keep it in that world. And I think, to be honest, anything he writes and anything he writes in this world is always going to be compared to the excellence of Alien. Now, Alien was about a group of working class blue collar truckers on a spaceship basically being hunted and stalked one by one by a xenomorph, by an alien, and that was the film. This is the same universe, but like you say, I think it turns into something different. It turns into mankind's search for their origins, for answers, which we're all fascinated by that concept and we'd all like to know, and I think that's what Prometheus looks at. But I think we're all expecting an alien to come in. We have to wait right to the end of it, but I think it is different to an Alien movie.
Yeah.
I mean, yes, it ties the two together. I think one of the problems with Prometheus is it leaves us with just as many questions as what we answer. Maybe the way my head works is a little bit analytical, and I'm not looking at the performances of the actors and actresses and the sets and everything else and the production. I'm very critical of the writing in the sense that I want answers about what Ridley Scott's shown us. The film itself is about finding answers to the origins of humanity, but I want answers about the things that Ridley Scott's given me on the journey to the origins of humanity. Let me quote you an example. On board the buried engineer's spaceship, the fluid comes out of those canisters, okay? It's not active when they first turn up, it becomes active. I don't have a problem understanding that concept. I believe it's a biological weapon, which is a forerunner in a xenomorph program which the engineers have come up with. And if we think about the Aliens movies, whenever somebody, whether it's John Hurt or Sigourney Weaver, whoever, walked close to a xenomorph egg, the egg had some way of detecting a presence nearby and opened, didn't it?
Yeah.
Now, I take the fluid in these cylinders as working on the same biological mechanism that, it detects someone's nearby and therefore becomes active, which would make it, as a biological weapon, useful. You don't want it to expend itself at a time when it's not needed, but when a target is nearby, you want it to become active. I don't have a problem understanding that. There's the bit where the two guys get isolated from the rest of the party and have to spend the night in that engineer's spaceship by themselves. Because of the storm, they can't make it back, yeah?
This is Fifield and Melbourne.
That's the one. And the fluid becomes more active at that stage. It's coming out of the canisters and it's around their feet and stuff. Like I said, I don't have a problem with that. And then that snake thing comes up and kind of unfolds itself from the fluid.
Yep.
What's that snake?
It's called a hammerpede.
Hammerpede. Okay.
And they reckon it was probably because we saw some earthworms or some kind of worm in the soil, and I reckon that the black goo has sort of changed it into that creature.
Right. So that black goo is the forerunner of the alien in the sense that it kind of engineers itself to whatever its prey is.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's a mutation of some sort. Where'd the earthworm come from?
Who knows? I guess it was already there.
Right, okay. Well, we're going to have to leave that opening because I don't think we're going to get answers on that. That obviously attacks one of the guys, kills him off and goes down his throat and all the rest of it. The other guy, I think, no, that earthworm thing, yeah, it has to be somehow related to the xenomorph through that biological weapon. Because isn't there a bit where the other guy, Fifield or whatever he is, tries to get it off the guy's arm, cuts it, and of course we've got the squirty acid comes out, don't we?
That's right.
So it's obviously some sort of biological relationship to the xenomorph through that fluid. That acid then melts the guy's faceplate on his helmet, and he kind of falls down face first in a load of the black goo, doesn't he?
Yep.
Right, now later on in the movie, he comes back a bit mutated. I think his face looks a bit like one of the aliens in Mars Attacks at this stage. And attacks the Prometheus, doesn't he? They end up running him over with one of them truck things to kill him off.
Yeah. Is that the one, does Charlie's Theron blast him with a flamethrower?
No, that's the character of Holloway, who's the guy who becomes contaminated via his drink.
That's right, yeah. Charlie Holloway, yeah.
Yeah. The guy that comes back and gets killed off later on in the film is Fifield, who's the guy, like I said, who goes face first in the fluid. I don't know. What's this? This fluid has kind of mutated him, but it was kind of killing Holloway. I don't know. I mean, I'm an idiot to myself because I want to understand now how it works. I'm not interested in the origins of humanity. All I'm trying to come to a conclusion about here is the origins of, and trying to understand the story that Ridley Scott's given me. I mean, perhaps you've got your take on this. Have you ever sat down and thought about Prometheus and tried to work out what's going on and been able to summarise it?
Well, I think the problem is, Dave, we had the perfect life cycle in Alien, and in Aliens we saw it in greater detail with the Alien Queen, things like that. Now we've gone back to sort of like the petri dish of aliens and some black goo that actually sort of metamorphosizes people. And it's a bit of a kick in the shins, really, because we thought the xenomorph was a creature that lived on these planets, got into people's, into our lives and sort of gradually replaced humans with xenomorphs. Now, in this context, as you say, we're seeing planet engineers with some black liquid that sort of contaminates people, changes them in a certain way. Not only people, but other life forms too. And it's affected different people in different ways. And including the engineer, which obviously comes a bit later in the film.
Is it the same black liquid that the engineer who's standing by the waterfall at the start of the film with the spaceship overhead drinks?
Yes, it is, yeah.
Well, in that instance, though, the black liquid doesn't mutate him. It seems to break his... My understanding of that scene is it starts to break his body down. He falls apart, yeah?
Yeah.
In that process of dying in that way, he falls into the waterfall. The liquid continues breaking his body down into its constituents, acids and DNA and stuff, which is then diluted into the water. And they actually show you that releasing his DNA into the water. In that it's working in a different way for him than what it's doing to these other people.
Yeah, you're right. I guess because he is, like, they probably designed it, didn't they?
Mm-hmm.
That
guy's a sacrifice. That's
right. There was a cut scene where you see another engineer giving this to him to say, look, this is your time. And he goes to the planet and lands and then kickstarts life in some respects.
Could we assume that this will with the waterfall is Earth?
It could be.
And he's seeding those amino acids and the engineer's DNA and stuff into the water supply, effectively making, I don't know, a more complex version of the primordial soup. He's putting the building blocks there that one day we will rise from.
It could be. But then again, we find out later in the film that Shaw realises that they're going to go to Earth next, doesn't she? So that's one of the things she's trying to prevent.
So why seed life on Earth? I mean, we find out that we've got a similar genetic code to the engineers that they created us. Why seed life on Earth, then just to go back later on with a biological weapon which is perfectly adapted to both destroy life and replace that life as it destroys it with itself? This is, I think, part of the problem with Prometheus for a lot of people and why it gets a bit of a critical bashing and people are a little bit turned off by it. I don't think it's the quality of the film, because I actually think the film is very good. I sat and rewatched it yesterday afternoon, and that I recorded a few sound clips and stuff from it whilst I was doing so. And I sat there thinking about it and I thought, this is watchable. This isn't actually a bad film if you take elements of it and then just follow it on those elements. I think the problem with it is, like I said, because of the high standard of Alien it goes up against, people expect answers. And I don't know that the film gives those answers. In fact, you come away from watching Prometheus with even more questions.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I think there was lots of questions. I mean, fortunately, I saw the sequel the other day, and I will say that the sequel does fill in a few holes from this one, from Prometheus. So Alien Covenant does answer a few questions.
So do you think if you now went and rewatched Prometheus, you would watch it in slightly different eyes than what your initial viewing of Prometheus, simply because of the information you've garnered from Covenant?
Yeah, I think so, yeah. The one thing, obviously this is on LV-223, isn't it? So it's not the same planet as Alien.
226. No.
Yeah, but it's in the same star system, apparently, as that.
Okay, well, I guess this is kind of probably going to be the local neighbourhood to the engineers. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think it kind of goes all over. I think we're kind of getting bogged down here in the quagmire of trying to work it out ourselves live on the show. I'm sure there's listeners that have kind of watched it and done exactly the same and might have come to completely different conclusions to us. That this biological weapon, which basically then, I don't know, that somehow seeds us from the engineers, and then somehow they're using the same principle to create the xenomorph later on to an extremely complicated life cycle. Are they kind of trying to say that the xenomorph is kind of an extinction, almost a descendant with a little bit of genetic tampering of us and the engineers?
Yeah, I guess more like, I don't know, more like their lapdogs, you know, they kind of do the bidding, I guess, if they want to clear a planet of life. This is the way to go about it, by just dumping the black goo on top of the planet and then waiting for the effects to take place.
And, come back 20 years later and the world's devoid of the life that was originally seeded on it, but then you've got a load of xenomorphs as a result running around, so then you've got to purge them again.
Yeah.
I mean, we know that the xenomorph isn't intelligent enough to recognise the engineer as some sort of master because of the king-size facehugger thing that jumps on top of the engineer at the end of the movie and plants a xenomorph embryo inside him. They don't discriminate.
That was the trilobite. That was the one that came from Shaw's womb, wasn't it?
The trilobite?
That's what they call it, yeah. So it was the one that she tried to terminate in the sort of Wayland's medical cockpit.
I don't know if she was trying to terminate it. I assume she just wanted it out of her, which makes sense. I mean, if you had a xenomorph growing inside your body, you'd think, right, get it out of me before it comes out of its own accord kind of thing. I mean, assume she's been impregnated that via Holloway.
Yeah.
Who's already
via David, yeah.
Who's already been tainted with the liquid, right? So are we to assume that this thing has travelled through Holloway's DNA and transferred to Shaw through that? Mm-hmm. Is it growing as itself, or is this thing a blended result of this tainted DNA from Holloway against one of her own eggs? Because don't they allude that she's actually sterile in the film?
Yeah, it sort of looks like that, doesn't it?
So I think it's just kind of going through the alien life cycle of needing a host as such, as opposed to combining with Shaw's own DNA to create a further life form.
And as obviously, I think Ridley Scott alluded to that Yannick and Vickers, they talk about sort of just going off to have sex as if it doesn't really mean anything, in the future. So people pair off and, on that ship, and that's it. There's no meaning behind it. So, but I believe that Shaw believes that she's kind of in love, isn't she, with Charlie Holloway? So it feels
that's what
like
Prometheus
that,
is. We're sitting there working it out, and it's trying to work it out. And it's all about swingers.
It's about swingers, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, you're right. Shaw and Holloway's relationship is a romantic one. It's not one of sort of, friends with benefits. It's not just about convenience. There is genuine affection between the two of them for each other.
What did you think of the music? I mean, is it Mark Stratenfeld?
I quite like it. I think it's, for a classical score, I think it's quite moody and heavy in parts. Mm-hmm. It gets ruined a little bit, I think, throughout by trying to be a little bit cultural. There's parts in the soundtrack where it comes down to very minimal piano music. Yeah. I think that's mostly looking at David kind of thing, and it plays a lot in the background when he's kind of just walking around the ship doing various duties or trying to pass time during the journey and the cruising stasis. Mm-hmm. I think it fits the mood and stuff, but I think the actual classical score extra to that piano music is much better. I think it feels heavy and it feels like something is overbearing. I quite like the score around the scenes where the engineer drinks his Bovril or whatever it is up at the top of the waterfall and then breaks down and falls into the water. And some of the music around the end. What I like at the end, before that score comes in and everything, after the xenomorphs burst, and just before that, you get the little bit where Shaw does the Ripley bit at the end of Alien, doesn't she? She leaves a transmission and signs off. Yeah. And I thought that was a nice little nod, in a way, to the original, because I thought that was quite effective in Alien.
Yeah, I do. I think, that bodes well. It sort of comes up again later. But yeah, I do think, and I think Noomi Rapace is a good actress. You kind of root for her. I loved her in the Millennium trilogy, the girl with the dragon tattoo and stuff. Mm-hmm. There was a problem with her on this one, that her English wasn't English enough. Ridley Scott said, why is the character English anyway? But she was supposed to be English, but I think her accent comes through quite a few times.
I never assumed the character was English.
Yeah, exactly.
No, I never really. I mean, obviously Elizabeth Shaw is quite an anglicised name. You'd think it would be the name of somebody from sort of the English-speaking world, but I never assumed the character was English because she doesn't sound English to me.
No. Obviously, Dariusz Wolski, the cinematographer in this one, and also he does it in Alien Covenant as well. And as you were saying, the first scenes of the engineer on the planet. Beautifully shot,
Mm-hmm. I think a lot of the scenes prior to that, when we're getting some of the score and the credits and the cast and that, in that opening sequence, and then that kind of opening sequence transitions through to the engineer standing at the edge of the waterfall, and he's got like his cloak on, and you can see off in the distance, up in the sky, the spaceship sort of hovering there, and then it departs, etc., etc. A lot of like you said, the cinematography and the film work up to that stage is a camera which is going across what looks like fjords and ravines and rivers, very basalty, volcanic looking rock and landscapes. I believe a lot of that segment was filmed in Iceland with cameras on dollies and also cameras mounted on drones and low-flying helicopters to get those shots.
That's right, yeah. And Hekla in Iceland.
Yeah, I think some of it possibly has been enhanced a little bit in post when you look at the kind of the filter or the general colour tone of the film, but all the same, it's like you say, it's beautifully well taken footage, and it's a stunning landscape, and it's easy to believe that this could be somewhere primordial, somewhere savage, somewhere a little bit volcanic and coming out of the Ice Age, Earth at that stage, possibly even. I think that's left open to interpretation, but I think it does work really well, that opening sequence.
Yeah, and it touches on Interstellar, which we spoke about quite recently, which is also filmed in Iceland. It is that otherworldly place that a lot of filmmakers will go to now.
Yeah, I mean, it's a custom-made set, isn't it? It's a great set. Oh, I mean, I know it's also parts of it were filmed, I believe, in Spain, Scotland, and in England. What was the studio for it?
It was the 007 stage, I believe.
The 007 soundstage. Okay, yeah. That's been used for a lot of different things, hasn't it? Though.
Yeah. The one thing I really liked in the credits to this was Brandywine Productions came up. And, obviously with Alien and Aliens, so it made it feel like part of the canon, really.
Yeah, as well as Walter and Hill, they come up quite a bit as well, don't they, in the credits? So it is kind of it's in that stable. I don't know that any real characters amongst the cast other than Shaw, David, and Vickers really stand out. I mean, Fassbender as David in this is exceptional. I think he's a really interesting character. I like it when they're going through his various activities, when he's practicing things, he's trying to come up with more of a defined way to the way he sounds, to the way he looks. I believe at one stage, isn't he watching Lawrence of Arabia or something?
That's right. And he watched, Michael Fassbender watched Blade Runner, The Man Who Fell to Earth, Servant, and Lawrence of Arabia in the build-up to this to try to get, he does look very Peter O'Toole-ish, doesn't he? So
it's kind of a combination of all these kind of characters. He does look like him, and he speaks very much, not very well-mannered and very formal. He's a nice character, David, isn't he? You think if you worked on a starship with David, the android, you'd like him, wouldn't you? You'd want to get on with him. He seems like a nice guy. He's polite. He's friendly the whole time, isn't he?
Well, until he offers you a drink, and then you'd politely decline, I think.
Now I'm going to give him a free pass there, because what does Holloway say before that when David asks him about where would you go to get your answers, and he says, I'd do anything. Yeah,
that's true. And doesn't Peter Whalen tell him to try a little harder? So I guess he was trying to push him to get answers quicker.
Yeah, I mean, this is kind of, Whalen's against the clock, isn't he? I mean, he's frozen at a stage of his life when he's perhaps got days left to live.
Yeah, and played by Ely's very own Guy Pearce, I'm sure.
Ely's very own Guy Pearce. Was he born at the RAF hospital?
He was, yeah.
Yeah, he probably has the same origins as many of us. And he features in Prometheus, which is an origin story about humanity, so it's all kind of appropriate and ties in together. We're not saying that the human race had its origins engineered in Ely or anything like that. God help the world, and by extension the universe, if it did.
As far as careers go, I think actors today, Michael Fassbender, most actors would happily swap their career with him. If you look at 300, Hunger, Fish Tank, Inglourious Bastards, Shame, X-Men, he just comes out with big movie after big movie, and not necessarily budget-wise, but just quality.
He's a very good actor. I mean, I understand. I haven't seen Covenant, but you have, and I understand he plays 2 incarnations of that model of android in Covenant.
That's right. There's a more sort of modern android called Walter, named after Walter Hill.
Okay.
So, and they're very different, but which must be quite a difficult role for one actor to play 2 characters.
And the other one is just David as we know him.
Yeah.
So I'm assuming at some stage Shaw patches him up because the engineer rips his head off.
Well, I'm not going to go into that. I don't.
You don't. The problem is here. You want to tell me about the things that fill in some of the holes in Prometheus, but you're aware that I haven't seen Alien Covenant, that a good number of our listeners haven't, and you don't want to give too much plot away.
Let's just say that David has a good body of work behind him. So.
Okay, so he hasn't been sitting idle in the gap between Prometheus and Covenant.
No, he's got more than just a head than when we see him. So.
Oh, good. I mean, like I said, he comes across as a friendly character. I mean, we'd all like David. I think if we all knew someone that was like him, we'd get on with them in real life. He'd be a popular person simply because this comes across as so nice. There's something about him I don't trust. He's very self-centered on his own objective. To me, he seems like he's serving Wayland the whole time, and will go to it, like you said yourself, will go to any lengths to carry through Wayland's wishes. Once Wayland has obviously died, I think David is in this for himself. Yeah? He was quite happy to let Shaw be a part of a greater experiment with the xenomorph, facehugger, squid, whatever you want to, tribalite, whatever you want to call it, embryo inside her. All of a suddenly, though, once Shaw's the only human that survived and he realises the engineer set off after her, he realises he has to rely on Shaw to survive himself, and he warns her about it, and he's quite happy to serve alongside. David's a bit of a cad, I think. I think he's happy to get on with, be friendly towards people and charm people if it suits his own purposes of his own survival. And I think once Wayland, whose direction David is following, has passed away, David's kind of in this for himself. I don't think David's benign, but I think he does a very good job of convincing you, the viewer, that he's a nice guy you'd like to like.
Yeah, you're right. Absolutely.
Yet he is the wolf in sheep's clothing behind that niceness. I think he's on his own agenda, and I think that probably is something that perhaps we get to see played out to a degree in Covenant.
Yep, you will do, yeah.
Okay, so fair enough. Like you say, we can't really go into Covenant too much and patch the two together. Yeah.
But they do knit very well, and it does feel like part one, part two.
Uh-huh.
So yeah, it's worth seeing. I enjoyed it, and it seems to be more straightforward than Prometheus, and it does answer some of the questions. So.
Is that just a gift that Ridley Scott has, though, that he can leave a film so full of interest but devoid of answers that we'll watch the next one just to find out what's going on? I mean, God's sake, we've got an upcoming Blade Runner movie coming on. I'm sure we've still got questions from the original Blade Runner. I don't know. That's the irony, is that Ridley Scott hooks us in with the desire for answers, and he did it with Prometheus, with a film which is about the search for answers.
And 5-year gap in between, so...
Okay, is there a 5-year gap in the universe?
It's 2093, I believe this one's set.
Prometheus is yes.
Yeah.
What about Covenant? Have we got a year for Covenant?
I think it's 10 years. Yeah, it's 10 years after.
Okay, so
2103.
So what happens in the missing decade? Is this the stuff that we're going to find out?
This is the stuff you're going to find out, yeah.
Okay, fair enough, then we'll leave it at that. So long as it does get answered and we're not sort of teased and tempted a little bit more. I listened to Mark Kermode and Simon Mayo's film podcast myself yesterday. I download it and listen to it most weeks anyway. But I was listening to it yesterday when they were talking about Covenant, and Covenant didn't fare too well underneath them.
Yeah, and I've had some feedback from people who I know have seen it, and they said that it was quite a straightforward story. It feels more like a Michael Fassbender vehicle. And what I will say is a lot of the other crew do not really come to the fore as much as they do in Prometheus.
Okay. Let's get back to the crew of Prometheus. Vickers, and the fact that Vickers dies in the end. Bit of a shame, really, isn't it? She was an interesting character. Okay, she was a bit self-serving.
Was she an android?
No, I don't think so.
You don't?
No. I thought she might be. I don't know. Doesn't she call Wayland father at some stage?
That's right.
And you imagine Wayland's, 100 and something, and she would be, mid-30s?
Yeah, I think he was born in the 90s. That's what it says in Covenant.
No, he was born in the 70s at the RAF hospital. Yeah, so this would make him around 100 years old. I mean, he's a selfish, obsessed character. Basically, he wants the engineers to give him immortality, doesn't he? Eternal life. He's days away from dying, and he doesn't want to follow through his life cycle and die. Maybe she is an android. Maybe she's an assistant he developed earlier on, and she looks to him as a father. Perhaps it's a different dynamic to David, who's perhaps less personal to him than Vickers.
Well, what Ridley Scott directed Charlize Theron is he told her to stand in the corners and move silently and just enter the frame, like as if other people don't know she's there. So the way she moves, and it does ask questions.
Yeah. That's always going to work when she's a slender blonde in a tight-fitting suit. I wouldn't want to see her there. Yeah, I'm not going to. She's not going to get my attention. Of course she is. That's ridiculous.
She really struggled with some of those physical scenes, actually.
Did she?
Yeah, because she's got a heavy smoking habit.
Right.
And, like running in those, I think, 14-pound boots and, trying to, it really took it out of her.
Okay. Oh, there you go.
I'm not feeling sorry for her after probably a pay packet. But...
Yeah. Okay. Sure. Like you said, you think it's a good performance. I think it's a good performance. Numi Rapace. Is that the name?
Yep.
Jesus. We always pick some good ones. I think it's a good performance, but like you said, I don't buy that she's English one little bit. I think she's from somewhere on continental Europe, possibly even Eastern Europe or Mediterranean Europe, as opposed to being English. So I think that's not a great aspect. But I do think her performance in the film, despite that, is still a good performance. I mean, it doesn't detract from my enjoyment of her performance. And until you mentioned the fact that the character was perhaps supposed to be English, I hadn't even considered it myself. I just enjoyed the performance, so... credit to her for that. It's hard. I mean, we've got Idris Elba, who's obviously as a character actor, who plays the captain. As a character actor, he's quite an interesting and compelling character. Again, perhaps a little bit underused in this.
Yeah, he's no sort of, I don't know, he's no Dallas, is he? He's no, I don't know, there's something about him. His character's called Yannick, sort of Polish name. He plays a bit of Crosby, Stills and Nash, doesn't he? But
yeah.
And sort of offers Vickers a chance to, go to heaven and back with him. But apart from that, yeah. But he's a likeable guy, isn't he? I think he's a RC captain.
No, he seems to have a good rapport with his crew, doesn't he?
Yeah.
I think the two sort of helm officers that stay with him when they ram the Prometheus into the alien ship, I think he gives them the option to go and he'll do it himself. But I think one of them turns around and says to him, with all due respect, you're a pilot, Captain. I better stay here, kind of thing. So that says to me, they're informal and have a good enough working relationship that they can have a little, despite the fact he's the superior, there can be a little bit of back and forth banter, and that's fine between them to do it. But it also shows that his crew are actually very loyal towards him.
Yeah.
So, like you say, possibly a good captain. I mean, if they'll follow him to the end, I guess he must be.
You never thought he had another sort of motive, did you? Like some of the other.
Oh no, like the crew that stays with him, he's got integrity.
Mm-hmm.
He's taking that out so that thing can't kill people back on Earth. Basically, at the end of the day, to him, it's that simple. It's a brave sacrifice. The same with the two guys that stay with him. Their sacrifice is a brave sacrifice. It's not about extending their own lives, because obviously they're about to forfeit their own lives. It's not about profit. No one's ever going to pay. Nobody's probably even going to hear about what they've done. It's just doing something brave to save humanity, basically, and that's all they do.
Eamon Elliott plays a character called Chance in this. And he's also in The Force Awakens. He plays a character called Brance. So you have Chance and Brance. But yeah, so that I don't remember a character in The Force Awakens called Brance.
No, I don't.
A nice little Star Wars link.
Yeah, some guy in the background, perhaps. What else?
Also, there's a connection with Moon.
Right, go on.
Benedict Wong is in this, isn't he? And he's also in Moon as well.
Is he one of the helmsmen on the ship?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's one of the ones that stays with the captain.
That's right.
Yeah. Who is he in Moon then? Is he one of the guys in the board in the video
right.
link?
Yeah.
Okay.
He's a British actor. He was in The Bill, Kiss Bang Bang, Sunshine, and The Martian, and recently Doctor Strange. So.
Okay. The Bill comes up so many things. So I always feel like we should be doing a showcase on the Bill at this stage. So many of these actors and people have come through the Bill, haven't they?
They have, and it just makes you wonder, it gets ridiculed by other actors, but I guess it's a good in to future films and TV.
Well, obviously, it gives them a chance to show a side of themselves that, gets put out there. Have we really got much more on Prometheus?
Let's have a look. I've got some facts and stuff here.
Okay.
This is H.R. Geiger's was brought in to reverse engineer the alien. So Ridley Scott said, look, we created this great beast. Can we bring it back to, its sort of basic stage? And Geiger died of related injuries in 2014, making this the last film he worked on.
Okay. So he does have that input in it. Yeah, I mean, it's easy to see, like, Geiger's... It's not just the alien itself. The alien that comes out of the engineer looks slightly different to the xenomorph that comes out of humans, but then I always associate the alien having some of the traits of the host.
Yeah, that's what I always thought. Yeah.
In Alien 3, depending on which version of Alien 3 you watch, one, it comes out of a dog, in another one, it comes out of a dead cow carcass, which is basically hung up in a larder.
I haven't seen that version, Dave.
I've got it on DVD. You can borrow it sometime if you want to. I think you have to go into the menus and select alternate version, and it inserts those scenes. Yeah, there were 2 versions of it released. Well, one version was released and the other version got put in the can, but on the DVD version that I've got, it has both versions. I always assume that the alien takes on some traits of whatever its host is. So I'm not bothered by the fact that it's still the basic xenomorph, but slightly different to the ones that we see bursting out of humans when it comes out of the Engineer. Yeah, I mean, Geiger's influence, isn't it? It's also there in the Engineer's spacecraft, isn't it? It's that sort of dark, sort of almost organic ribbing in the seats and in the sort of structure of the corridors, the fairings and coverings and the corridors. It's kind of that kind of black ribcage thing that we associate so much with Geiger's artwork, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think that's reproduced quite well in this. I can also see parallels between the interior sets of the Prometheus itself and what we got to see on the Nostromo or the Sulaco from the original Alien movies. I think it does feel like it fits, and it doesn't feel too disjointed to me.
No, one question I had, at the beginning we see that giant sort of disc-like spacecraft.
Yeah.
And then we go back to the regular sort of space jockey craft that we're used to seeing. So what happened to the giant sort of saucer craft?
I don't know. Unless that is the sort of standard spacecraft, but from a different side on angle. Perhaps they're just turning it on their head. Maybe that's something that's worth looking at frames or stills of that scene and trying to ascertain if there's similarities or if it's something that's completely different.
Yeah, like a mothership or something like that.
Yeah, obviously it's not something that gets mentioned in Confident, or you wouldn't have mentioned it there.
No.
I should really sort of explain to you. When you say the space jockey, that term first came into parlance in describing the alien that's in the chair in the ship that they come across in Alien, isn't it? When they enter the spaceship on the planet. That's when that term space jockey came into being, because they needed a name for that character. Prometheus obviously takes that further, and we find out the space jockey is actually the engineer. But when I looked in Alien, when you look at it, I think that it's kind of got a sort of elephant look to its face that character in the chair has.
Yeah.
Because it looks almost like a trunk coming down from the nose and that. We find out, and I assumed that was the creature's actual skeleton sitting there. I never realised it was a helmet, and that inside that it would have its own skull and stuff. Bit of a stretch there. I mean, I don't know, a lot of the engineer's technology seems very much biological as opposed to sort of the way we would understand it, computers and machinery and stuff.
Yeah, I mean, we see David sort of experimenting a lot, don't we, with language and also with the keys to that chamber, which is really interesting because when it goes in, we do see like sort of xenomorph motif at the top, don't we? Which is a bit of a homage to Geiger. So, but I thought that was good. I like that, and I like when they could see the digital rendition of what happened before, and you see the sort of engineers running down the corridors and stuff like that. So there's a good technology.
That's something they've come across as a recording and what have you. What do you think happened to the xenomorph that bursts out of the engineer at the end of Prometheus? Do you think it's still running around in that place now?
Yeah, I don't think it done much. I think it was just probably looking for some more potential victims. I don't know whether the creatures look for food or look to kill. It's difficult to say, isn't it?
Well, they've got a system that we don't understand anyway. I mean, when do we ever see a xenomorph eat, and yet after bursting out of its host, it grows quite considerably? When does the facehugger that comes out of shore eat? I mean, that's quite a small size that you imagine could fit in her womb when it's in that sort of medical chamber after it's performed that sort of emergency cesarean on her and it's stapled her back up and it's suspended in that claw thing.
Yeah.
And we see it hanging there, and it's, I don't know, it's 6 by 6 inches kind of thing, sort of thing. It's not that big, is it? You imagine it could come out of a body, wouldn't be too big a presence. And yet the next time we see it, when it's trying to get out, it's like the thing's like a bloody giant squid or something. It's thumping away at the door, and it's bigger than the actual engineer that it ends up impregnating. So
That's right.
I mean, we can assume that thing's not been fed at all. So where does it get that gain in mass from?
There's no egg sac or anything, is there?
We have a gain in mass. We grow through carbon and calcium and water and proteins and so on. Building blocks we get from our diet over a period of time, which builds our bodies. What the hell's that thing eating?
I don't know.
Where's it getting the size and mass from? But the xenomorph is very much the same like that. It comes out of a body of a size where you believe it could fit inside a body. Like we see in Alien, 2 or 3 days later, when it grabs Brett, it's the size of a man or bigger.
Yeah.
So that's something that needs answering. What gives it that energy and that mass?
you can't put it in a cat box anymore, can you?
No, yeah. There's another question that we've just got that's thrown up about it.
Well, Ridley Scott based a lot of these ideas on Eric von Daniken's writings on ancient astronauts giving the Earth a foot up. I think it was called Chariots of the Gods,
right?
Which itself was sort of, people have said it's kind of ripped off Edgar Allan Poe. And one of Scott's early ideas for this was that one of the engineers was Jesus on Earth, and it caused a lot of controversy in the Vatican. And,
why?
Well, people didn't want it to be sort of so close to home, I guess.
Yeah, close to home.
Well, the Vatican's official newspaper, L'Osservatore Romano, gave a negative review of the film, saying this mishandles the delicate questions raised by the battle eternal between good and evil.
Right.
So yeah, they weren't too. I guess because it changes the complexities of life as we know it.
You know what? I think Ridley Scott was probably much closer to the truth than anything any religion has ever said, and we accept that Ridley Scott's account is fictional.
Yeah.
We don't have a lot of time for religion, really. Yeah, if they wanted, I don't know. That's kind of downplayed it now. I don't know, really. I guess have you got much more on it?
Well, no, that's about it. They're 34.6 light years from Earth.
Okay. But they cover that distance in a time of around 4 years.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Nomi Rapace wasn't born when Alien was released, so that puts us in the picture.
Uh-huh.
And James Franco was considered for the role of Holloway, but he didn't get it. However, he does have a role in Alien Covenant, so look for him in that.
Okay.
And there are 1,300 digital visual effects shots in this film. However, Ridley Scott still believes that if you can do it live, do it live.
What do you think to the visual effects in this?
I think they're great. I don't have any problems with the effects at all. I think, comparing it to the fourth Alien or the Alien versus Predator films, this just shines. I think it's polished.
Visually, this is an amazing film.
Yeah.
Like you said, not just the scenes and the sort of the Greenlandic landscape and the opening scenes and the waterfall where the spaceship has been inserted in the sky. It's astounding, like on the moon when the engineered spacecraft's getting ready to leave, and it's like the ground itself is splitting on a mechanism, and you see the ground moving apart and pieces of dust falling into the cracks, and it looks like the mechanism or the hangar door or what have you that's over the engineered spacecraft in the ground interlocks by like teeth or gears or something that holds it. You see the edges of them as it all comes apart. Visually, the film is stunning. The sound engineer and sound work and sound design of this film is also stunning because the two mash seamlessly and they're so believable. It's hard to really. Like I said, when I sat and watched this yesterday, I know people say it's got issues, and I know Prometheus has its critics, but I think it's a better film than people realise. I think it's the fact that it doesn't hold up brilliantly to Alien because it's a different type of film to Alien, and because it leaves people coming away sort of scratching their head thinking, well, what about this? What about that? It doesn't gratify people with a lot of easy answers that they went in for that people have kind of taken against it. I honestly think it's a better film than the mainstream see it as personally.
Yeah, I agree with you there, Dave. I think the problem is that there are lots of questions left unanswered, and a lot of the cinema-going public wants a rounded film, like a linear story that we can end, and I think it does leave you asking questions, which not everybody likes.
Yeah. Out of 10, where do you come in?
Well, I mean, I'm going to have to say 7.
Yeah.
I want to say more, but I'm going to say 7.
I'm going to say the same. And a bit like yourself, I want to give it higher because I like the film. I think it's a good achievement for what it is, but like I said, for some reason it just comes slightly shy. I think, it's a good solid 7.
Yeah.
So anything, right, so I guess we should get onto some local lunacy then. Okay then, local news. I got a couple. This one's from the Ipswich Star newspaper website, which I think is the first for us. It's dated, dated the 11th of May 2017, and it's via their correspondent, Tom Potter. Now, you have to imagine this article. It shows you a picture of an aeroplane on the cover. Mm-hmm. Now, underneath it, it says, was this plane carrying a T-Rex over Woodbridge?
What?
Exactly. A Russian aircraft spotted in the Suffolk skies may have been used in the filming of a Hollywood movie. Jerry Hockett photographed the Aleutian Il-76, I believe that's how it's pronounced, developed for the Volga Depner Cargo Company from his Melton garden. Rumours suggest scenes for the latest instalment in the Jurassic Park franchise are being filmed at Rock Barracks military base near Woodbridge in Suffolk. According to Mr. Hockett's checks of an online air traffic radar, the Il-76 came in from East Midlands Airport at about 6:30 p.m. on Tuesday. Before that, it had flown from Sabetta in Russia into East Midlands Airport on May the 7th. I was lucky to be in the right place at the right time, he said. I heard an almighty racket and saw the plane going over. It did 3 circuits before landing. I mean, 3 circuits basically means it did 3 dummy approaches, and on the 4th it landed. Mr. Hockett also spotted that the Volga Depner airline liveries had been removed from the plane, which was expected to leave for Stansted after its stop in Suffolk. A T-Rex in the skies over Suffolk, and then an unmarked Russian cargo plane delivering a model T-Rex to a former airbase in Suffolk. This isn't conventional, is it?
Not at all, no. And I mean, when you said you heard a racket overhead, I thought it was the T-Rex sort of banging around in the cargo hold.
Sticking its head out the window and roaring a bit. Should give our listeners a bit more of a fun. This is one of these stories that the more you peel it back, right, the more mysterious and the more bizarre it gets. Woodbridge, which is where it finally landed, I believe doesn't even have the runway there anymore. It's like a grass dirt strip. So no wonder this guy did 3 circuits before on the 4th he decided he was happy and committed to the landing. It's an unmarked cargo aircraft flying an aircraft in from deepest Russia to land in a former airbase, American airbase in Suffolk, which doesn't even have a runway anymore. It landed basically on a dirt grass strip, carrying in a Tyrannosaurus Rex. This is a mystery, isn't it?
It is a mystery. It's like one of those dinosaurs is missing.
It's a compelling one. It gets better. Woodbridge was what was once known, right? RAF Woodbridge. It was an American base, a bit like Lakenheath or Mildenhall or Alconbury are today. It was once known as the twin bases in the fact that right next door to it, literally within a mile, in fact, the runways ran parallel, and in an aerial photograph, you couldn't even tell it was a separate airbase, but it was called a twin bases because you had RAF Woodbridge and RAF Bentwaters basically built together. They were inside the same fence, but they were distinct air bases to each other, okay? Had their own runways and everything. Now, RAF Bentwaters, which ran alongside RAF Woodbridge, like I said, literally within a matter of a mile of it, is the scene of the famous Rendlesham Forest UFO incident back in the early 80s.
That's right.
This whole area starting to sound a bit like the Twilight Zone or something.
That is one of the most famous UFO incidents in Britain, isn't it?
Yeah, it's one of the most documented and most recorded, and that's something I'm hoping that we can talk to Tony Buckingham about when we talk to him on the 3rd of June, because he has a lot of knowledge about the incident. Yeah, bit of a bizarre one there, isn't it?
It is, yeah. Well, I'll just tell the people of Suffolk and I guess Cambridgeshire as well to watch the skies.
Watch the skies and watch out for unmarked Russian cargo planes flying in mock dinosaurs. I wasn't aware that possibly scenes from the new Jurassic Park film or Jurassic World or whatever it is were being sort of shot just up the road here, were you?
No, not at all. I mean, I know they are shooting Jurassic World too, but I didn't know whereabouts. I was thinking more exotic Hawaii or somewhere like that.
Just up the road here. We'll have to watch that one. It's a mystery in itself. This one comes from the Wisbech Standard newspaper, website dated 10th of May 2017 via their correspondent John Elworthy. He's a correspondent who's come up with this before. Fenland Council says we cannot prosecute ourselves as they dismiss tit-for-tat challenge on overgrown sites and warns see you in court. That's the opening headline. Let's get into the story. Under fire agent. Now, it doesn't say what sort of agent he is, whether he's an estate agent or secret agent or I don't know. Anyway, under fire agent Peter Humphrey facing a legal challenge by Fenland Council for the state of a strip of land he owns, has been rebuffed in a tit-for-tat Challenge. Now then, he's been busy compiling and sending examples to Fenland Council of land they own, land he claims is in just as bad a state, if not worse, than the land that he owns. But Lee Walsh, Planning Compliance Manager, says as the land in question is owned by Fenland Council, then the use of planning powers would be inappropriate. We cannot see ourselves with a Section 215 notice. Now then, that's the same notice served on Mr. Humphrey for the plot west of 93 to 94 North Brink, Magazine Lane, Wisbech, which requires him to trim and remove vegetation or risk legal action. So basically the council is trying to sue him for letting land that he owns become overgrown and unruly, right?
Yep.
He's responding by going around looking at land the council owns and trying to sue them for exactly the same thing. Tit for tat. Now then, Mr. Humphrey received a copy of an official caution and advised to seek immediate legal action before responding. But his response has been to build a casebook of land owned by the council, which he claims is overgrown and dangerous. He sent in photos of land in Oldgores Way, Newbridge Lane, in and around the boathouse, all in Wisbech, and also Station Road in Whittlesea, and New Drove Wisbech to prove his point. Basically, he's saying, before you tell me to cut back my stuff, you ought to have a look at your own stuff. You know, get your own house in order kind of thing.
Oh, surely there's a role for him there at the council. They should be paying him, sort of going up, checking up on the land that they've not sort of maintained.
I love the fact that he's so annoyed with them for serving this notice against him that basically he's trying to get them to serve exactly the same notice against themselves.
Yeah, and they're refusing, saying that there's no criteria for them to sue themselves, sort of thing.
Yeah, well, that makes them a dictatorship if they're not accountable to anyone, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does, yeah.
I have to say that the Fenland District Council land is not only in a worse state than my land at North Brink, but it makes the town look a mess and in a more visible location, thereby lowering the image of Wisbech, he said. I don't know.
How low can it go?
Exactly, it's bad enough already. He told Mr. Walsh, clearly by leaving the land you own in the state you do shows disregard to the image of Wisbech. It sends out the wrong message to would-be investors and developers. He insisted his own plot of North Brink, whilst covered in brambles. This deters inappropriate use. It is not an eyesore, he says. Mr. Walsh responded by telling Mr. Humphrey that as a responsible landowner, we must maintain our land in a reasonably and tidy condition, especially where there is the potential detrimental impact on neighbours. Therefore, our priority would be to deal with land where people are directly affected. And whilst your concerns about the land you have identified are important, they appear not to cause you any direct harm. Well, this is the council getting a bit pious here, because they're saying their poorly maintained property doesn't harm him, but they're also saying that his property could harm others, so it's a bit convoluted. And he also said he would no longer respond to Mr. Humphrey regarding council-owned land, but instead invited him to email photographic evidence to the Council Estates Department. In the meantime, he urged Mr. Humphrey to comply with the legal notice. Now then, Mr. Humphrey responded by noting that having visited my site, I am concerned that since I have looked into the Wildlife and Countryside Act 1981 on this matter, I believe there may be nesting birds within the site. So basically, it sounds like he's looking for excuses to try and not do what the council is asking him to do.
Yeah, and quite rightly, I think there are some laws about set-aside sort of since gone by the wayside, but obviously lapwings, nesting lapwings, numbers are on the decline. We were talking about great crested newts last time, weren't we? So there's always something there you can use to help you, I guess.
Yeah, it sounds very much that way. Under the circumstances, can you please confirm that you are happy with me cutting back all vegetation on the site to a height of 200 millimetres? So here he's saying to them, look, I can cut it back, but, this is going to have an effect on the site.
Well, he's offering, isn't he? At least to make an effort.
Yeah. Last year, Mr. Humphrey was refused permission for 3-bedroom homes on the Magazine Lane site, even though in 2007 a 3-bed detached bungalow had been approved there. Wisbech Town Council supported the latest application. It said it would result in more vulnerable development within flood zone 3 and would also impact on the amenity of neighbouring homes. Well, I don't know why they would support it. A council spokesman said they had a responsibility to investigate all cases of untidy land and buildings reported to it, and that includes council-owned land and property. We have to assess each case and its merits and always try to seek the improvement of the land or property without recourse to formal action, said the spokesman. Mr. Humphrey is welcome to report any cases to us at any time, and we will look at each case and feed back to him. There you go. I love the fact that, they're trying to say, well, you're doing this. He's basically trying to hit them back with exactly the same thing.
fire with fire.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, they've got the law on their side, haven't they? So
Yeah, I know, but I don't know. There's something about it. I instinctively want to back the underdog here. I like the fact that he's kind of dug in with his claws and he's not prepared to shift with him, and he'll fight back in any way he can do.
yeah, that's right. Well, good luck to him, and hopefully he gets a few more followers and people start backing him, and perhaps he could start a blackberry farm or something like that.
Do you think maybe he needs some people to start financing him, like a hedge fund?
It could be a prickly subject.
Yeah, I don't know if he's going to defeat this with what he's got, his resources at the moment. He's going to need to branch out a bit here, I think, and see what he can do to take on Fenland District Council.
Well, they are going to get to the root of the problem eventually.
Yeah, it does sound very much like, though, he's come up against the right jobs worth. He's just like saying, oh, look, I'm just enforcing it as it is. I'm not interested in what you've got to say, blah, blah, blah. Some little smug clerk somewhere that he's had to liaise with, and I'm a bit on the side of Mr. Humphrey, I have to say.
You can imagine, some Arnold Rimmer. Subsection 24 clearly states,
He's like the guy with the clipboard with the bulldozer at the start of Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. He's quoting this, that, and the other. Some you just want to hate this guy, don't you?
Yeah.
And you want the underdog, the sort of person who's been told to cut his hedgerow back or what have you, just to fight back as much as possible, in my opinion. What have you got that's local?
Nothing much really, Dave. Just about the local cinema. I'm really happy that we finally got a Cineworld just from me and you, 10-minute walk away, really.
Yeah.
So it's just great that I was there on Friday to see the Alien Covenant film, and we've got an ice cream parlour in there, and it just seems so novel to have something close and something accessible for us under the underpass.
Well, you've been in there. I mean, I haven't been in there.
Mm-hmm.
What's your appraisal of the cinema and its facilities? Did you like it?
I liked it. I mean, I sent them a Facebook comment. I think the seats might be a little bit too small for yourself.
Oh, great.
Compared to the View, as you know, in View in Cambridge, they're those huge seats, aren't they, with the recliner and the table on your lap and that. They're really good. But hey, I'll take anything over the Maltings, to be honest. So, how long has that been there? And it's not really a cinema. This is a purpose-built cinema, and we should all visit it and keep it sort of high on our list each weekend. Really, I think
it's been a long time coming, hasn't it? How many screens has it got?
6 screens.
Oh, that's pretty good.
Yeah, and a friend of mine, Scott Wright, was there today for a kids' party. I think they went to see the film Sing, and he was saying it was really good, to go with his kids, and that's quite a nice experience, I think. So
yeah, certainly something we need. I mean, you can't really. I mean, I've only really driven past it, and you can't really. Whilst you can see the building, you can't really ascertain the full scale of it from the bypass.
Yeah.
I got embroiled in a bit of a post about this during the week on Spotted and Ely about it. And that's turned a bit nasty. The thing is, and I agree with this, some of us have an issue with the underpass.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I associate underpasses with big built-up and often squalid urban areas. I think as a design, they are flawed. They are a magnet for crime. If you're looking to attack somebody, mug somebody, or just a group of youths hanging about, you've got a scenario where you have cover from the underpass from 2 directions. You're only visible from 2 others. I mentioned some of these concerns online. Somebody come back and said, well, yeah, but that's close to a busy leisure village. Nobody's going to see something or misbehaving at that time of day because there's going to be too many people about. It's going to be too active, too many witnesses. What if you're going to a midnight showing of a movie and you're coming out there at 2 or 3 in the morning?
Yeah.
The place isn't busy then. And I know that area, because I live close by, similar to yourself, is active, because you often hear kids out in the summer at 2, 3 in the morning on the benches and that, getting drunk out the back.
Yeah.
So the area is active at night. I also think the underpass is a magnet for graffiti or anyone that wants to stop have a quick whiz on the way to the cinema.
Well, I will say, I did say that to my girlfriend, that it looks pristine and like the walls are clean and they're putting up new lighting and stuff like that. And yeah, I think it's up to all of us to sort of make sure it stays that way, really.
I think it is, but I also think it's going to fall foul of the way things are. But in the online world, I mean, there's a comment on Spotted and Edith. Someone said, "Oh, it's so wonderful to have it, and don't worry about the people that don't want it, this, that, and the other." And I can't see any posts going up other than our friend Mr. Law that don't want it. I think a lot of people, we were sort of basically criticising the concept of the underpass, which we think is outdated and not the most secure, and why we should have had a bridge instead. But the people like myself that are objecting about that we seem to be getting tainted with this reputation now of being anti-cinema, and I'm certainly not anti-cinema.
Mhm.
It's ridiculous. People have, taken that argument completely out of context.
Well, I'm always been pro cinema. Underpass, I went under there, I don't know, 10 to 3 in the afternoon. So, and it's like pretty light at the moment, isn't it? But as you say, in October, November, when it's a bit darker at night, will there be cameras up around there? I don't know. And how will it be? It's quite a long way from, although it's obviously under the road, it's a long way from, like, on this side from the actual police, isn't it?
Yeah. So, I mean, same as anyone. I mean, I hope that people use it correctly in this, that and the other, but I also know this is the real world we live in, and there are idiots, and I do fear that it's going to be a bit of a problem. But that's my opinion on it. Like I said, I was just a bit niggled because people like me that have raised that concern have been, you're anti-development. I'm not anti-development. I just think there could have been a better solution for people to get across the bypass. And I'm not suggesting that they put nothing in there. I mean, a lot of us were saying, well, a bridge would have been a better idea. But, I'm not by any means suggesting they should have put nothing in there and then the locals should have to play Frogger to get across the bypass, dodging cars or going. This is this simplistic argument that people have been putting out that, you're anti-development. Not anti-development at all. I'm just pro-good development.
Well, we'll have to check if there's a hedgehog walkway or a frog walkway under there as well. I didn't really look for that.
Well, I suppose they've got the underpass as well. Maybe that's why we got that instead of a bridge, so that hedgehogs and frogs can cross. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, who knows?
It's just a hop across.
Yeah. What did the rest of it, does it look like when you go over there, the actual site, the leisure village, does it, a lot of it still feel a bit like a building site to you, or does it, does it start to look a bit finished off and a bit slick and a bit nice around there?
No, indeed, it does feel a little bit unfinished. There are plenty of things to still open, but what I will say is that the people there, were so friendly, really welcoming, and just wanted you to know, that you were welcome. If you had any questions, approach them. Everyone was smiling and happy. So they've obviously been in there a couple of weeks and sort of prepared for the first batch of customers, and they did a great job. And I hope they continue to welcome people from the surrounding area. Really.
Well, I think that's important. I mean, they know that they've got to be under a degree of local media spotlight when they open something new like that. And then these days, social media, people talk about things is to try and establish that kind of right image straight away, isn't it? I mean, they know that's important, so I think they're always going to try and, hit the ground running, but hit it running in the right way, which is good. I mean, I'm looking forward to getting over there and seeing a movie or two, I will admit, but I won't be walking through that underpass at 2 or 3 in the morning. I'll be taking the motor if that's the case.
Well, let's wait and see what happens. Hopefully nothing bad comes of it, and it continues to become popular and people keep going.
Yeah, I don't want to be on an online post one day in the future saying I told you so. I'd love to be proved wrong, but that's my opinion on it. I got nothing else local, mate.
Well, that's it for me, really, Dave. I think, as I said, I've been away in Sicily and Palermo, so so I was a bit behind on local news. So those two, stories really help. So
yeah, I mean they were a bit minimal. We hadn't really had a lot of Star Wars news. We've gone back to Prometheus because it's around the Alien Covenant release time at the moment.
Yep.
It's not been the fullest episode really, but then we've not had a lot of good stuff to report on. I think they'll pick up for the next one. What do you want to do for the next one?
I don't know. I mean, we've got quite a few probably in our pocket, haven't we, that we know are possible. I'll check the online goal to find out if there's any sort of sci-fi films that we haven't covered that we can let the sort of our audience know, and I'll converse with you during the week. Yeah,
sounds good to me. I don't know, perhaps we should do something a bit UFO focal, considering we've got a special interview coming up not long after the next one.
Yeah, there's some good ones, isn't there? I mean, Arrival, I haven't seen that yet. I heard good stories about that.
Yeah, is that the one where something comes down and there's like 2 aliens in it or something? Just the 2?
I'm not sure how many, but it's about a sort of linguist, isn't it, who has to sort of decipher what the aliens are telling them.
Yeah.
Amy Adams. I don't know, but we'll have a look. See what we've got. See what you've got in your skybox and compare. We'll come back.
Yeah, let's try and do something like that. So we're off now, and we'll see you again in a fortnight.
Yeah. See you soon.
See you soon. Take care.
Final report of the vessel Prometheus. The ship and her entire crew are gone. If you're receiving this transmission, make no attempt to come to its point of origin. There's only death here now, and I'm leaving it behind. It is New Year's Day, the year of our Lord, 2094. My name is Elizabeth Shaw, last survivor of the Prometheus, and I'm still searching.